the Supreme Court of India became consumer forum, where specific grievances of persons from Bihar were being addressed, sometimes positively, sometimes not so positively.
We have seen the West Bengal election, which gave a quote unquote a very surprising result. Very few people expected this kind of a BJP sweep or a complete rejection of the Trinamool Congress.
If women were not excessively deleted in the first structural exclusion, first 56 lakhs, where women's deletion, as in every state, was excessively more. It matters in the case of Bengal because in Bengal, the voting, the women tend to favor TMC substantially more than men do. That has been a standard pattern in Bengal.
What exactly was done? What was the manner in which delimitation was done in Assam and in Jammu and Kashmir to be able to change the verdict very significantly?
Bengal style SIR is allowed in the rest of the country. And
Assam style
delimitation is carried out in the rest of the country. Then we can say goodbye to democracy.
Hello and welcome to The Federal. You're watching Conversations with Nilanjan. For the last almost a year, there has possibly not been a day when we have not heard about SIR, or the Special Intensive Revision of the Electoral Rolls of India, starting with Bihar it started. Now, over the last 1 year, SIR has been discussed with alarm, and from the other side saying that this is absolutely necessary. We are going to be talking about SIR because possibly in the last 1 year, if anything has actually emerged which is going to change the nature of Indians' electoral democracy, it is SIR and the impact it is having on the electoral rolls. Now, to talk about this, I could think of somebody no better than Yogendra Yadav, because right from day one, Yogendra Yadav has been writing about it. Now, as you all know, Yogendra Yadav has been a very well-known social scientist. He's been one of the pioneering psephologists of the country. And over the last few years, he has left that partially behind and become almost a full-time social and political activist. Somebody who is ever ready to explain fairly tedious things to the people of this country. So welcome to this program, Yogendra Bhai. It's really a delight to speak to you. And as I said, I really couldn't think of anybody better. And in fact, we waited, as you know, because you were traveling and busy, to discuss SIR with you. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I just wanted to thank you and say that, not partially, I've left psephology entirely behind. And at least I like to think of myself as a political activist, no less, no more.
But in my imagination, there is a partial element of psephology to somebody who I can turn to understand things when one is not able to comprehend certain things. Now, in one of your recent articles, you have written, and I'm quoting you, the Supreme Court judgment in the ADR case meaning the Association of Democratic Rights, and you are also one of the petitioners. So it could possibly also be called ADR Yogendra Yadav case, is to our times what the ADM Jabalpur case was to emergency. Before asking you why did you make such a statement, I would like you to also explain to our viewers ADM Jabalpur very briefly so that they can understand why you are drawing this comparison.
Thanks, Nilanjan Bhai, for starting with that, because I think that is the essence of what we are going to discuss today. And while ADM Jabalpur is spoken about by everyone, spoken and taught to every student of law, anyone who does LLB, anyone who goes to a law school learns about ADM Jabalpur case. But very few people outside the legal circle really know what it was about. Now, this judgment was delivered in 1976 in the middle of the emergency. During the emergency, the government had suspended rights of the citizen. The question was whether it suspended the most basic right to life. In other words, very simply put, if a police person were to kill someone right on the street, could you go to the court to say, what have they done? This question came up before the Supreme Court through a series of petitions. The first one happened to be someone called ADM of Jabalpur, who had appealed against an order of the Madhya Pradesh High Court of that time. But there were hundreds of petitioners there. The essence of the question was, can the government take away your right to life? It was before 5-judge bench, and all of them were renowned legal minds of its time. Some of the persons, you would be amazed to hear the list of names. This was Y.V. Chandrachud, this was Justice Bhagwati, Justice Beg, and Justice Ray, and Justice Khanna. In a 4-1 judgment, with the only dissent being from Justice H.R. Khanna, the great jurist of our time, the Supreme Court then said, yes, your right to life can be taken away. You have no right to habeas corpus. If police takes you away tomorrow, you cannot go to court to say, what happened to my brother? What happened to my father? Where has he been taken? The court gave long judgment to say, during the emergency, your right to life is taken away.
Right.
Now, ADM Jabalpur was critical, not only because it said it extinguished the right to life and habeas corpus. It was important because it signaled then that during the emergency, you don't need to go to the Supreme Court. There was no point in going to the Supreme Court anymore. And that is why I draw that parallel between ADM Jabalpur and ADR case, AD being the common thing. In this case also, there were many petitioners. I happen to be one of them, but I'm very happy that it's known as the ADR case because Association for Democratic Reform, an independent non-partisan organization, has for decades fought for democratic reforms in this country. And they were in the court, so they were the principal petitioner. All of us were add-ons.
Yes. Now, in the ADM Jabalpur case, there was contemporary criticism. What do you see the response to the ADR case at the moment? Are people understanding in this country the implications of the Supreme Court judgment? And if they are not understanding, can you also briefly tell us what you think are the implications of the ADR judgment? You wrote an article also, I'm just mentioning, you also wrote an article that you did not go to the Supreme Court on the day the judgment was delivered because you had some kind of a premonition as to what the judgment is going to be. Not premonition, you knew from the, you wrote in that article that from the manner in which the hearing was heard over the last several months, you knew what the judgment is going to be all about.
Premonition would be too big a name for that, Nilanjan. You look at the case, you see how it's progressing, and in many ways, you sometimes know the outcome. In this case, it was absolutely clear. The case started on the 10th of July in 2025, when there was a vacation bench of Justice Dhulia and Justice Bagchi. We went there, and the judges immediately said, well, there appear to be 3 problems with SIR order. These were judges who were saying it. One, they said the timing is very odd. Why are you doing it just before Bihar election? Second, they said, why are you denying things like Aadhaar and ration card and the EPIC card? And third, they said, who are you to get into citizenship questions? These were our 3 basic issues.
You being the Election Commission of India.
Yeah, again, to the Election Commission of India, the judges were very harsh to them and asked these hard questions. The order, however, was put in a very polite language. It said that the Election Commission should consider allowing these other documents as well. And we thought, well, it's a vacation bench, so they are trying to be very restrained. The case went to the normal bench, which was Justice Suryakant. He was Justice Suryakant then, later became the CJR. And Bagchi. In August, 1 month later, in a sense, the hearing was over. All our arguments had been put forward. by 14th of August, the Election Commission was to be given the last chance to respond, as is the normal practice in the court. When the Election Commission started responding, Justice Suryakant said, wait a minute, there are some issues. Why don't you go and resolve it? Looked quite reasonable on the face of it. But thereafter, Nilanjan bhai, for months, the Supreme Court of India became consumer forum, where specific grievances of persons from Bihar were being addressed, sometimes positively, sometimes not so positively. But the basic question of whether this exercise was constitutional or legal was not being addressed at all. Bihar election came and went. Then the second phase of SIR was announced in 12 states. It was allowed. And once that happened, we knew the case is decided. Once you allow more than half of the country to be covered by SIR,
that the SIR process would be declared constitutional. That is what you felt.
Quite clear that the judges thought it would be constitutional. And if there was any doubt, two things happened during the SIR hearing on on Bengal, which is a separate case. Yes. Justice Suryakant said, if no one should obstruct SIR, if anyone obstructs SIR, we will see to it. Something to that effect, he said. And Justice Bagchi said, when in Bengal case, the Supreme Court was approached to say 27 lakh names have been deleted in a completely unfair manner. Justice Bagchi famously remarked, it's all right if they can't vote this time, they can surely vote next time. The case was decided. Then after that, you didn't need to see, you waited for the judgment to see the exact fine print. You still waited for the judgment to see if there would be some ifs and buts, whether there would be some restraints, some little guidelines, some little processes being put for future. But the judgment was, where the judgment would go was absolutely clear. So I didn't need to any premonition or any deep legal knowledge. It was quite clear where the case was going. But the important question that you've asked, Nilanjan, is about why is it that ADR judgment should be compared with ADM Jabalpur judgment? Technically speaking, it's a judgment on Bihar, SIR in Bihar. It is not a judgment about any other state.
Right.
But as it happens in Supreme Courts and courts all over the world, one case becomes a precedence and that is replicated in everything else. The judgment that the court has given in this case leaves absolutely no doubt that the Election Commission of India now is free to carry out SIR in all other states. So number one, it's not about Bihar. Number two, the kind of clean chit that the Election Commission has been given by the Supreme Court of India makes it clear that it's not only the SIR process right now, but in future as well, if the Election Commission wishes to tinker with the voters list any which way it likes, there is no constraint whatsoever. And that's the stunning part of this judgment. And therefore, to my mind, and that's the conclusion that I'm drawing. The first two things any legal person would tell you. The third is my reading. It could be wrong. But my own reading is that just as ADM Jabalpur judgment signaled that there was no point in approaching apex judiciary during the emergency about the excesses of the regime, similarly, the conclusion that someone can draw from ADR judgment is that now for matters which are politically sensitive, there isn't much point in going to the Supreme Court, or at least you would have to think twice before you go to the Supreme Court on matters that are politically sensitive. On other matters, you do. On certain things, you will have to go to the Supreme Court. Where else will you go for bails and such like? But if there are things that concern the regime, where the regime puts its foot down, does it mean that the shutters of the Supreme Court will also be down at that point? That's the question that arises. And that's a very, very, very big, very concerning and deeply troubling signal that we read from the ADR judgment.
No, when you say that the signal that comes out is that there is no point of going to the Supreme Court on anything that is political, which means, it's not just related to elections, which you're saying, anything political. So then you are suggesting a complete co-option of the judiciary within the executive. Is my reading correct?
That would probably be an overstatement. What I am definitely suggesting, and I'm certainly not suggesting that every single judge is part of, is part of what is now being often suggested as an executive judiciary. This is a term coined by Gautam Bhatia. I find it
That's
very
right.
executive judiciary. A judiciary which is more executive minded than the executive itself.
Right.
Not suggesting that every single judge is a part of that, but we have this weird institution called the master of roster.
That's
where
right.
can
One
decide,
person decides that who is going to hear what.
in which case, if there are, let's say, assume half the judges in the Supreme Court do not share this particular mentality, how does it matter? Because those sensitive cases will never go to them. And this is not just one case, Nilanjan Bhai, that we are looking at. There's a slew of cases, series of cases in the last few years. And this one is a culmination of, you could mention all kinds of cases. I don't want to get into those specific.
No, of course, we have most infamously the Ayodhya case, something about which we all have been agitated, and we have seen as to how benefits for the judges in the bench followed, So I do not want to get into that at the moment. You have also written
the bail case for Omar Khalid and Shajil
Yes, it's been dragging on for the last 5 years. We can just keep on talking about these cases quite endlessly.
So these are scandals in modern judiciary, I would honestly say. And the reason I call as ADR judgment, in a sense, the final signal, is because let's not forget, Nilanjan, what is at stake here. What is at stake here is disenfranchisement. What is at stake here is about 10 crore Indians being removed from the voters list. And I use this figure absolutely carefully. So far, 60% of the country has seen SIR. And as a result, about 6 crore names have already been removed, net removal, net exclusion.
From all these states you are saying, this is the number count that you're giving from Bihar, Bengal, Tamil Nadu, or in Assam, which had a separate Assam.
First phase was Bihar. Second phase was 14 states and union territories, which have covered, all these put together have covered about 60% of India. Another 40% is to go. So if 6 crores have been removed from 60% of India, it's reasonable to assume that another 3.5 crore or 4 crore would be removed from the remaining 40% of India. About 10 crore voters are being removed from the voters list. Please do not forget that the fundamentals of India's architecture of universal adult franchise has been overturned. In this country for the last 75 years, 2 rules prevailed. Number one, the onus of being on the voters list was on the state, not on you. Someone came to your house just as they come during census. It's their responsibility to put your name on the voters list.
Right.
That has been overturned. Now you have to fill a pro forma. You might have been voting in Delhi for the last 40 years. Makes no difference. You will have to fill an enumeration form. And in case you don't submit your enumeration form within 1 month, your voting right is extinguished with not even an appeal that's allowed after that. Second basic presumption was presumption of citizenship. If someone comes and knocks my door, I open the door. The presumption is that I'm an Indian citizen. If there is a complaint, if there is some evidence, if there is some objection, that's a different matter. But the presumption is that I'm an Indian citizen. And if I were to apply to become a voter, I just had to give a self-declaration. For the first time now, the presumption has been overturned. Now the presumption is, I don't know whether you're an Indian citizen or not. Show me where you were in 2002. If you were not there on the voters list, show me someone family who was there. Now, these 2 fundamental things have been altered. So number one, we are looking at 10 crore people being excluded. Number 2, we are looking at the entire procedure, established procedure of universal adult franchise being made to stand on its head. And number 3, we have evidence now that these exclusions are not just random, that women all across the states, and this is evidence that was presented to the Supreme Court, wherever SIR has happened, the proportion of women on the voters list has fallen, sometimes mildly, sometimes dramatically, as in the case of Uttar Pradesh. We know that migrants have suffered. We know that minorities have suffered. We know that in some cases there has been targeted exclusions. So, to sum it up, I would say we had for the first time, Supreme Court had before it a case that involved a curation of voters list in a way which violated the fundamentals of equality, fundamentals of universal adult franchise. And if the Supreme Court says yes to that, as they indeed have said, then to my mind, this is absolutely like ADM Jabalpur. Once your habeas corpus right was taken away, everything was taken away. In this instance, once your right to vote can be taken by election commission, everything in a democratic setup is taken away. That's why I call it the ADM Jabalpur moment.
And that is why you also call about, the curation of the voter list, what you are actually saying in a separate article you just mentioned also. So when we talk about the curation of the voter list, a big question arises that has India already reached a situation or is about to now reach the situation? It's just a matter of time that India will see the BJP reaching a situation where they can never be electorally defeated in this country.
I call it the Desh Kalapatra moment. What is the Desh Kalapatra? These are the three elements that constitute democracy. These are three elements that we classically associate with any major move. And my suspicion is something like this, that after the shock of 2024, someone sat down in BJP headquarters, I do not know who, and said, okay, there are three problems we face. Three things that we need to take care in order to ensure that we do not face any such shock in future. Desh Kalapatra. One, Desh is about space. There are geographies, there are regions in this country that don't vote for BJP. Very well. They cannot be relied to vote for BJP. Can somehow their weight be reduced? Can they be shrunk in some way? That's one. The answer to that is delimitation, which is going to come, which
has already happened in Jammu and Kashmir and Assam. We will talk about that a bit later.
Yes. So if delimitation can be done and reallocation of seats, which is a part of delimitation, which is not of late, can be done, then the weight of those states which don't vote for BJP can be reduced.
Right.
Second is Kala. Elections happen every 8 or 10 months, every year. The government is answerable. Mr. Modi is being tested. Can we not postpone this jhanjat and make it once in 5 years so that things can be managed for 3?
One nation, one election, which is
the one solution. And the third is the problem that certain sections of society do not vote for BJP or do not trust even when they vote for BJP. Can their votes be reduced? Can their numbers be reduced? Now, obviously, you cannot do away with those persons. But is there a way that you can reduce their numbers from the voters list? That is SIR. Now, in SIR, two kinds of exclusions have taken place. I would not say that all the 10 crore exclusions that have taken place due to SIR are targeted. That's not the case. We have seen two kinds of exclusion. One is structural exclusion. That is to say, those persons whose enumeration forms are not returned, they are automatically thrown out. Now, this is not targeted, because every political party worker is entitled to filling their forms and so on. However, the experience of the last 1 year has shown that this particular provision systematically goes against women, against migrant, against poor. There is no systematic exclusion here. It's a structural exclusion against anyone who's weak. It goes particularly against women for one particular reason, because you are now being asked to produce certificates about your own family. Now
Right.
imagine and wife, both of them are 20-year-old. Let's say they are 25-year-old. They were not voters in 2002. The husband
Right.
has to that his father was a voter, which of course he can because he stays in the same village. He would
Right.
get particular village's voters list and show that my father, my grandfather was a voter. His wife cannot say that my parents-in-law were a voter here. His
Because they were
wife
in
will
some other place.
that her parents,
Right.
my he has to get a certificate from her Mica of whether they were voters 25 years ago. Most women will manage it, some women will not. This puts excessive burden on women, and therefore we have seen state after state after state that the proportion of women on the voters list has fallen. It's a structural exclusion. The most shocking one is Uttar Pradesh, where in population there are 940 women compared to 1,000 men. In voters list, there were 875 women compared to
1,000 voters.
77 compared to 1,000.
1,000
And
men voted.
it dropped to 824. This is what the SIR has done. But this is structural exclusion. You cannot say that these women were selected to be those who would not vote for BJP. That's not the case. At the same time, we have now seen second kind of exclusion as well, which is careful, targeted, curated,
Okay.
of which Bengal is a classic example. In Bengal, there were 56 lakhs of this normal structural exclusions with the standard biases.
56 lakhs of normal standard exclusion.
Over and above that, there were 33 lakh of special exclusions, of which I'll remove 5-6 lakhs because these were standard objections. But this 27 lakh case that we hear, these are people who had filed their enumeration form, who had appeared for hearing, who had presented their documents. In many cases, they had presented their passports, and yet their names were deleted. No surprise that 65% of them were Muslims, although in Bengal's population, you have only 27% Muslims.
Right. Far greater than.
Of targeted exclusion. So in SIR, we have seen both structural exclusion and targeted exclusion. Both of these violate the spirit of universal added franchise. Both of this work to the advantage of the BJP in the long run. But the second one, for which the example and now the evidence is absolutely clear, the second one is a complete scandal. And that the Supreme Court, while they have not decided the Bengal case, but the fact that Supreme Court has not laid out any norm whatsoever, any constraint whatsoever in its present judgment, in a sense now makes it clear that the court has chosen to close its eyes to one of these biggest scandals of our time. And that is why we are really now getting into that stage where BJP may succeed in its mission of permanent majority. Because in 21st century, dictators need to hold elections. Unlike 20th century, dictators in 21st century cannot pretend, cannot simply brazenly say, I'm in power because I have power. They have to pretend to have legitimacy. They need to pretend to have popular support. So they have to hold elections. Even Mr. Xi holds election, Putin holds elections. BJP now would like, so we are now moving in that direction of electoral autocracy, where elections will be held, but the outcome will be predetermined.
I couldn't agree with you more, because I happen to be a voter along with my family in Uttar Pradesh. And while the SIR was going on, we were asked to provide, from the 2003 SIR, we were not residents of Uttar Pradesh then. And back then in Delhi, we were not voters for various reasons. And it was really very difficult. What eventually got us through was that we were not Muslims. And we were told this in no different words, that आप लोगों के लिए कोई problem नहीं है, आप लोग तो यहीं के रहने वाले हैं. So यहीं के रहने वाले. Now the question arises is that what kind of Muslims are being targeted from your experiences? Even among the Muslims, in Bengal, for instance, is it just random, or are there some specific type of Muslims who are being allowed during their interviews, during their submissions of documents, and certain kinds who are being completely rejected and deleted from the voter list?
I wouldn't know. I could see a distinction in Assam, although SIR was not a major issue. In Assam, BJP has made a clear distinction between Assamese-speaking Muslims and Bengali-speaking.
Yes, that's right.
They get absolutely two different treatment from the state. That's absolutely clear. In Bengal, I couldn't get into this specific distinction that you're asking about. My sense is that in places where there was a clear chance of their supporting the TMC, where TMC had done very well, those are places which have seen massive exclusion of Muslims. But I wouldn't know more than that.
Right. Let me ask you, we have seen the West Bengal election, which gave a quote unquote a very surprising result. Very few people expected this kind of a BJP sweep or a complete rejection of the Trinamool Congress. To what extent was the SIR factor, to what extent did it determine the result? Let's try to understand. Would you be having a clear idea on this?
Nilanjan bhai, I've done elections, I've done election forecasting, and yes, elections are meant to surprise. And when you get a surprise result, the first impulse should be to say, was I wrong? Was my correct? Did I not try and get adequate information? So the first question should be to oneself. So when the result surprises me, my first impulse would be to say, did we underestimate popular unease with the TMC? Probably we did. That would be my first impulse. There were some signals, and TMC has been in power for 15 years. There were brewing discontent, which we may have underestimated. There was some bit of popular anger, which we may have underestimated. The question is whether all that, assuming that we underestimated, was that enough to give the kind of result that we have? Alternatively, the question would be, if SIR exclusions had not taken place, then would we be in the same position? Now, there are two ways of answering it. The question on which research would happen, PhD thesis will be written, and you and I can get the broad outlines of what. Number one, if those 27 lakh voters deletion, which took place in the second phase of SIR, which have now been proven to be decisively curated, anti-TMC, and so on and so forth. If those
given that 65% were Muslims,
exactly 65%, and we've run softwares to check it, so I can speak with confidence. This is what my team has ascertained: 64 point something.
Right.
Now, if that had not happened, suppose these 27 lakh people had voted, and assuming that they were overwhelmingly TMC persons, how many seats would have changed hand? The answer is about 26 or 27. TMC would have got about 26, 27 seats more. BJP would have got about 27 less. But that's one part of it. The second interesting question which people have not asked is, if women were not excessively deleted in the first structural exclusion, first 56 lakhs, where women's deletion, as in every state, was excessively more. It matters in the case of Bengal, because in Bengal, the voting, the women tend to favor TMC substantially more than men do. That has been a standard pattern in Bengal. So when women's vote goes down, when women's, in Bengal, in the previous election, this is a point that Dr. Prannoy Roy has made in one of his articles, and that's when it struck me. In Bengal, women, in terms of those who actually vote, on the voters list, women are less than men. But among those who go to vote, women are more.
Women are more.
That's right.
Yes.
So this changed for the first time this time because of it. Now, if those women who were excessively deleted, if they had voted and they had supported TMC in the way that women normally do in Bengal,
that would be a presumption. But nonetheless, the fact is that, yes, we cannot definitively say that
absolutely.
they would have voted for.
We cannot also say about 27 lakhs as well. All these are presumptions. These are, all
Yes.
in the social scientists called these are counterfactuals. What if? So if you add women as well, then we may be looking at 40, 50 seats that change hand. And 40, 50 seats changing hand could even change the
nature of the verdict. The mandate would have been completely different.
We are not even speaking about other things that happened. The manner in which the campaign took place, the completely brazen communal hatred that was allowed in Bengal, the manner in which the election officers behaved, the manner in which counting took place. And in some cases, now we have a clear evidence of what happened in counting.
Right.
It is leading by 316 votes till the evening. Counting is over. Election officer says, come tomorrow to collect the certificate. And when he goes next morning, he has lost the election by 316 votes. And a new round, which was not existent, took place. And in that round, the fellow got only 5 votes. The other one got 590 votes. I mean, so I'm not even talking about all these things. So I'm not saying we have a foolproof case that TMC would have won in the absence of the manipulations in voter list. We don't know yet. But certainly the outcome would not have been the kind of outcome it is. And therefore, I would put this election in the category of complete red flag elections in the history of India. Since you are a student of history as well, Nilanjan, one of the few who've India's political history so carefully, I would put the following elections in that red flag category. Bengal election of 1972, won by Shankar Ray. Assam election of 1983.
That's right.
Jammu and Kashmir, 87, at least that one.
Yes. If not 83.
And Punjab election of 1992. These are elections about which there is an overall question mark against their outcome, whether the outcome reflected popular mandate. And Bengal definitely belongs to that category. There's a question mark. We cannot still be whether Siddharth Shankar in 1972. But there is a question mark, you would agree. This is one of those elections. That's all I can say.
Right. Let's move to another aspect of this entire manner. What you said, Desh, Kal, and what was the third word you said? Desh, Kal, and
Patra.
Path. Sorry, it slipped out of my mind. Delimitation. Assam, we know. Now, Assam, we know that out of the 126 seats, there used to be about 29 to 35 seats. That is my understanding from what I have read. I am not a cephalogist, but were those where the Muslims used to have a certain amount of definitive influence. That if they voted en bloc, they could actually get somebody who is a Muslim or somebody who is backed by the Muslims to be elected. Now, this number has shrunk to about 20 to 22. In the changed political scenario that we are seeing, where the Trinamool Congress is splitting up, where the DMK is also likely to back certain issue-to-issue basis the NDA government, the bill which was brought a few months back and it could not pass muster because it did not have the two-third majority, delimitation, women's reservation, increase of the Lok Sabha seats is likely to be brought back. So before the next parliamentary elections, we are possibly going to see a very hurried delimitation of the entire country. What exactly was done? What was the manner in which delimitation was done in Assam and in Jammu and Kashmir to be able to change the verdict very significantly?
Absolutely. I'm glad you bring this in, Nilanjan, because that, although it doesn't concern the particular case of the Supreme Court,
Case, yeah, it's
but
beyond that.
if Bengal style SIR is allowed in the rest of the country, and
Assam
if
style.
case style delimitation is carried out in the rest of the country, then we can say goodbye to democracy, the electoral democracy. There's really, after that, there's no point in contesting elections in this country. I'll tell you what happened. I'll just take the example of Assam. Now, delimitation, just for the benefit of our viewers, comprises three things. Number one, delimitation leads to reallocation of seats for different states and within the state for different districts. Number two, delimitation involves drawing of fresh boundaries of the constituency. And number three, delimitation involves deciding which constituency will be reserved for which category.
That's right.
In Assam, all these three were manipulated in a way which is extraordinary. We have never seen something of this kind in the history of this country. In America, there is a term which most Indians have not heard of. It is called gerrymandering. In America, actually, parliamentarians decide their own constituency. I mean, Parliament decides the constituency of the next election. Obviously, the members of Congress and the legislative assemblies sit down very carefully to decide boundaries which suit them personally. In India, that disease never came. It never happened because these boundaries were drawn by an independent commission. Now, in the case of Assam, delimitation happened as for Assam, Jharkhand, and J&K, separate from the rest of the country, which had happened in 2006-7, which was a normal delimitation, no questions about it. What happened in Assam in 2023 is extraordinary. Before delimitation began, Mr. Hemant Biswa Sarma gave a public statement to say, we would like this delimitation to reduce the political strength of the Mias, a code word for Bengali Muslims. He actually gives a target. He says that we would like 106 constituencies of Assam to be dominated by indigenous people, and Mias should be limited only to 20. These are public statements.
That is public statements.
Yeah. Then delimitation happened, and at the end of it, Hemant Biswa Sarma thanks the Election Commission and says, well, we have ensured that at least 104 constituencies are now safe for the indigenous communities. Mias are limited only to 22. All these are public statements. Now, look at what actually happened. And it's not just about Muslims and Bengalis. It's a very interesting thing that has happened. Three things happened. Number one, districts where BJP was unsure of doing very well, the number of seats were reduced in those districts. Number of places where BJP felt relatively more confident, those districts were given higher number of seats. Parliamentary constituencies where BJP felt BJP was almost sure of losing, parliamentary constituency would have 12 assembly segments. And where BJP was unsure of winning, was very sure of winning, only 6 or 7 assembly segments. Number one. Number two is the business of drawing of boundaries. I really wish we could show the maps. And please do if you can. I'll send you images from Election Commission's own website. The constituencies have been shaped in a way which is extraordinary. There are islands of one constituency in another constituency. So what they did was, suppose there are two constituencies next to each other. This upper constituency, let us say, had 60% Muslims. The lower constituency had 40% Muslims. And there are places in Assam of that kind. And BJP would lose both of them. So what they have
from here and put it there.
In the 60% constituency, they put more and more Muslims. So it becomes 95%.
And the other one becomes less.
Becomes 15% Muslim. This is the game. So क्या है जिसमें you were losing one by 20,000 votes. Now you lose it by 70,000 votes. How does it matter? You lose one seat. The other one that you were losing.
That you are safe. That you're safe. It's safe.
So the calculation that people have done is that there were about 36 seats, which were, in that sense, Muslim dominated, not necessarily Muslim majority, but where Muslims had a decisive say.
Significant influence.
That has come down to 22. Hemant Biswa Sharma's calculations are absolutely spot on. But it's not just Muslims. Hemant Biswa Sharma felt uncertain of the Ahomia vote in Upper Assam. Their domination was reduced. Hindu Bengali who were migrants and many of them are also migrants from Bangladesh. Many of our viewers may not know. In Assam, the majority of what are called illegal migrants are not
Hindus.
They are actually
yes,
and are the mainstay of BJP in Assam. BJP is for their party. So their strength has been increased from about 6 or 7 to about 15 constituencies where Hindu Bengalis now have a decisive say. The proportion of constituencies where Bodos have a decisive say has also been increased. So as a result, the net result was a map of election which was completely distorted. And incidentally, I forgot to mention, places where Muslims were bound to win an election have been now declared scheduled tribe reserved, scheduled reserved. All this has happened. So as a result, we now have a map of election where before the first vote is cast, BJP begins with 20 additional seats. I'm not saying that BJP won Assam only because of that. I have said, and on Assam, I would say with confidence, that even if delimitation had not taken place, Congress would have lost the election. But
yes,
election was so substantially manipulated through this. In Assam, SIR was not the problem. In fact, they did not do SIR in Assam. That's another scandal. The only state in the country where illegal migrant is a real issue, is a legal issue, has been talked about, has been enumerated. In that state, the SIR did not take place. They did not require any enumeration form. They did not check anyone's citizenship because they knew that if they would check citizenship of everyone, there would be more Hindu illegals than Muslim illegals. 7 lakh Muslim illegal migrants and 12 lakh non-Muslim Hindus. That's why in that case, SIR did not take place. Now I'm saying, so SIR was not an issue in Assam. The issue was delimitation. And if that kind of delimitation happens, BJP starts with a big advantage. And if that kind of a delimitation is allowed to happen in the rest of the country, honestly, Nilanjan Bhai, I would really say in that case, the opposition should just step out and say, we don't want to participate in this kind of election. That is where we have reached in this country.
You know, you have concluded at a point which is extremely, depressing, pessimistic, if I say, because what we are seeing is a clear roadmap ahead. There is a possibility that the BJP will be having more numbers in Lok Sabha to be able to get the 2/3 majority. And this is what you are doing. You have taken us exactly step by step through the SIR process, what has been done and what is going to happen in the states where SIR will now be done. Delimitation is likely to happen before the next Lok Sabha election, and the number of seats in Lok Sabha is going to be increased. So there will be need for greater vigil in times to come. I do not know how much or how successful this vigil would be, but till the time we would possibly keep on pointing out if any distortions are being deliberately done by the state. So we hope to keep on coming back to you, and thank you for this brilliant walk through SIR, a final summation. That is the way I actually look at this program, and then delimitation, what lies ahead. Thank you very much, Yogendra Bhai, for being on this show. Thank you so much.